Well, 2009 is finally about over. Thank goodness, because it was a wet spring, it was a wet summer in a lot of places, it was a wet fall, and what that led to is ruts out in fields. It is a farmer's worst nightmare when you just can't get that crop out, or you just can't get your work done, and you say, well, I know I'm gonna make a mess in my field, but I just have to get it done anyway. You know what? Unfortunately, when you have those ruts, a lot of times you end up paying for that many years down the road. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the problems that ruts do cause, why they last so long in the soil, and what you can do to fix the problem, hopefully going into next year.
When you were saying 2009 is finally about over, I thought, no, it's not. 2009 is going to carry on for another year, 2 years, 3 years, several years down the road until you can fix these ruts that are out in the field. It's been extremely wet in certain parts of the country, and when you create ruts, it's a big time drawback on your farm, because if you don't deal with those ruts, if you just kind of cover them up, that hard pan that you've created on that spot is going to stay there for years and years, and you will see it aerially looking down on your field. You'll see those tracks out there. It'll make a big impact.
Yeah, just to give you an idea how long some of this stuff can last, we tiled a field just south of the field that we're at right now for one of our neighbors. And there was a guy who used to farm that ground, and I think that guy has passed away like 10 years ago. I'm talking 20 years ago, this guy left some ruts in a low area of the field, and literally you could still find some of those same ruts and some of those same problems when we were going through the field now. 20 years ago. I mean, it's just crazy how it stays out there. Again, if you've got problems on your farm, you got to figure out a way to deal with them. The first thing I'm going to tell you is you got to look at, why did you have the ruts in the first place? Now, if it was an unusual year, that's one thing. But like for this farmer right south of us, it wasn't an unusual situation. It was a wet area in a field that just needed to get tiled. I mean, he could farm through there, but he would usually end up leaving tracks going through there. That's not a good thing. So get drain tile in. That a lot of times can solve the main problem that you've got. Now, if you have ruts out there, you got to figure out a way to eliminate those ruts and get that ground really back into production, because all a rut basically is an area where you have totally smashed that soil down. You have very, very severe compaction, and roots are not going to penetrate through severe compaction. So what are you going to do?
Well, you absolutely have to put some air back into the soil. You have to fluff that soil up one way or another, whether it's with a deep zone builder where you can get down a couple feet deep and try and clean up any of those ruts that are a little bit deeper. Or if you do just some conventional tillage across the top, maybe you've got some ruts that are 6 or 12 inches deep. You could just rip that ground.
Yeah, but
there's several different options.
Okay, you
there.
talk about the conventional tillage. A lot of times you'll have a rut that might be 6 inches down or maybe 12 inches down. How deep does the compaction really go? Is it just at 6 or 12 inches? In other words, do you just want to get to the bottom of that rut, or do you need to get deeper than that?
I think you just go out and do a little bit of probing and find out for yourself, whether that's with a shovel and you do some digging just in one spot. I realize maybe you say, wait a minute, I don't want to go do a whole bunch of digging. That's what you get somebody like Brian for. Have him come along, do some, well, you know what I mean. Have somebody else do a little bit of digging if you can't do the digging physically.
Yeah, but here's the way I look at it. If we've got a rut that's 6 inches deep, chances are your compaction is 2 or 3 times that deep. And that's where this zone builder concept that we're talking about on our farm, we're trying to get down 20, 22 inches deep in a lot of those areas. And, keep in mind too, most of the time at least, it's not over the whole field. It's just in a few areas. So we'll go out there with the zone builder if we have those kinds of problems. If you don't do that, you're going to end up limiting root growth for many years to come. Like I was telling the story about some of the ruts we could find out in that guy's field from 20 years ago. That's a long time. We want to try to fix the problem. And again, you got to look at what was the main source of that problem. If you can get some tile in there, you improve your natural drainage, things like that. Hopefully in the future, you'll leave fewer ruts out in the field.
If you've ever looked at a potted plant or the small flowers that your wife may buy in the spring, if you don't get those things planted right away, the plants just don't do very well. And that's exactly what happens out in your field. When you limit that root growth, and those areas of the field where you have ruts are going to act just like a plant that's in a pot that's too small. They just don't have enough room to grow. They're going to be limited, and they are going to suffer severely when you get some type of stress.
Yep. Now, here's the other thing. If, let's say, your ground is frozen up now, and you had all these ruts that you ended up, you were forced to be out there when you didn't really want to be, don't get all panicky about the thing. Don't worry about it. You know, we don't live in an ideal world, unfortunately. I mean, every day is not perfect when we're out there trying to farm. You just have to try to do the best you can. So you got some ruts, so what? So do a lot of other people. Don't worry too much about it. Just going into next year, try to do everything you can to fix the problem, and you just have to go from there and hope for the best.
One other problem you may want to clean up on your farm is weed control, like our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to get it done coming up later in the show.